This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
I think it's different for all of the games that I have made. I think that this, I don't know if this is an unsatisfying answer as well, but I just kind of like the process of creating and iterating.
Why would that be a bad answer? It's an amazing answer.
I don't know, because I feel like I should be like, I saw this thing in the game and I knew that only I could do it or whatever.
No. Welcome to Tabletop Talk, the podcast where I delve into the minds of tabletop gaming creatives. Join me as I uncover their creative process and inspirations. You are in the right place if you enjoy listening to thoughtful interviews with creative people.
Hello, this is Gasland's Mike. When I'm not playing Car Wars, I'm listening to Tabletop Talk.
My guests today are Jay Strautman and B. Marsollier. Jay is a Toronto-based designer, professional musician, and award-winning podcaster. They've released 2 zine-sized games, Contact and The Insatiable Cravings, both GM-less and monstrous leaning. They tour the world as a professional bass player and co-host, score, and then edit the Planet Arcana podcast, a tarot-infused science fiction actual play. Jay, welcome to the third floor.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get into origin stories, real quick, first off, 2 great names for games. Like, I don't know what Contact and Insatiable Cravings are, but I want to find out because the titles are great. Just real quick, talk to me about professional bass player and touring. Can you give me a little idea of what that is?
Yeah, I've been playing bass professionally since I was 15 years old. I started by doing a residency while I was in high school in a different city. Every week, I would go and play with my cover band. And then eventually from my small town in Alberta, I drove out and moved out to Toronto. I hooked up with some other musicians, and I've been touring for the last 6 or so years internationally. And yeah, it's been a really cool and fulfilling thing that is, I think, a very blessed place to be. I think not many people get to experience travel like I do or seeing the world like I do. So it's really cool.
Oh, I'm going to dig more into that, Jay. But you're not the only guest I have today. B is a Canadian illustrator, game designer, and award-winning podcaster, and the co-host of Planet Arcana. B's background is in writing, editing, comic books, and blackjack. B's interests include ghost stories, high camp, curation, and mythologicalization. Did I get that right?
You nailed it.
Welcome to the third floor.
Thank you. Welcome to me.
So we'll come back to Jay, but B, I'm going to have you answer the question that every podcaster asks you, which is super annoying. And hopefully it'll be a little bit different and we'll explore a little bit different here. But I want you to imagine the day before this hobby was ever in front of you. So you knew nothing about sheets of paper, writing down stats, flipping tarot cards, or rolling dice. And then it was put in front of you for the first time. Can you take me back there?
Well, I think the first time would have been several times as a teenager where my brother valiantly attempted to start up several home games. And we made it through session 0 and a couple of session 1s. And that was that. I wouldn't say that was necessarily my hook introduction. That was sort of what allowed me to realize it existed. And then many years later in my adulthood, Jay called me up. We were in our 20s and they were like, "You want to play in a campaign that I GM?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that went on for several years until we kind of decided to put a mic down in front of us and to co-GM a campaign. So yeah, it went from my brother endless session zeros to a really awesome long campaign to the podcast that we run together.
So, well, I want to go back to your brother for a second. What was happening or not happening that kept like the stall starts, right? Did just we didn't have the energy for a session 2 or?
I think it was a combination of like not having the right table, different people every single time. And then I think just not getting beyond the session 0. Character creation is really fun, but it's hard to hang a ton of investment on that without actually playing, especially, and this was D&D 5e. So I had a lot of experience at the time. Right, that's right, 3.5. So I made a lot of characters, which was really fun. And they were actually the exact same character every time with different stats. But
well, so let's talk about then Jay reaching out. Well, first of all, how did you meet Jay, and how do you two know each other?
Right,
is a great story.
so B's brother who ran the campaigns, I was in those.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. No kidding.
We've been friends.
All right, so how do you know B's brother then? I'm going to keep going backwards to your birth here in a second.
Basically, B's family and my family moved to the same small town in the same year. And we were both quite young. I was 9 years old and B was 12 or whatever.
I was 11,
but her brother was my age. So we were in the same class, and both of us really didn't have any friends because we had just moved there. So we immediately got to know each other and we became fast friends. And then I met B just by going over to their place all the time.
All right. So now I guess I'm going to come back to you again, Jay, but now do you have any insight on B's brother's failure to go beyond a session 0?
Roasting. Sorry, Joseph.
Joseph, the name of the podcast is What's Up with Joseph.
It's so funny because I had sort of the same experience as B, where like I made the same character over and over. They were always a dwarf warrior first, to whatever extent. And I'm really I think it really was that like we just couldn't get the same people to come over each time. So it was a brand new table each time, which is just impossible. I seem to remember we made 3 sessions into a campaign with the same people. And then I think we were just teenagers that had other stuff going on. So it was really just not a priority.
All right. So back to you, B. I want you to think about then, what would you consider kind of your first real game then? It sounds like we had some fits and starts, but looking back on it now, can you remember what you would consider your first real experience?
Yeah, it would have been when Jay reached out to me to play, because that turned into a 50 plus session campaign with the same players at the table every single time. Can you imagine? And it was an incredible experience. And it kind of like opened up the idea that you could do this in a million different ways. And as long as you have as long as you have a table that works for you, you're going to produce something incredible. It was called the Eldur campaign that Jay ran for us for years. So that was my hook.
And what was the system? D&D?
Yes. Yeah, it was D&D 5e.
Excellent. So B, as you're playing, you're realizing, I kind of dig this. Were there any other game systems that you came across in your path? So if I were to consider D&D the first signpost, are there any other signposts that we run into?
Not until after we started the podcast and we started meeting other creators, other designers, and all of them were indie TTRPG designers. So, but pre-podcast, I had a little bit of experience with Starfinder. We did Honey Heist, but then post-podcast, we were playing games like Adamnesis, Upriver, Downriver, Tangle Blessings, and each and every single one of them, like even they were all one shots, but they have such a distinct presence in my mind, and that sort of then put the bug into, I think, both of us to start designing games.
It's funny because when I talk to most people, a lot of people start off with D&D. And then they get indie curious, and start playing around a little bit with other systems. But I tend to find that there's kind of a game that blew the hobby wide open for you, right? Is there a game that you came across that truly was so different than anything you'd ever seen before and just made you realize that role-playing games and D&D are not synonyms, right? That D&D is just a RPG. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I feel like I've been sitting here trying to remember if we played Monster of the Week pre or post podcast, because for me, finding some Powered by the Apocalypse games definitely made me realize that there was like a whole, especially knowing that there's so many different Powered by the Apocalypse games,
right?
That I was like, oh, there's a whole subgenre. And yeah, I remember playing Monster of the Week and being like, oh, this is so new to my brain.
So we're meeting at Planet Arcana. We're meeting at the two of you playing together. Jay is running the game. And this evolves into a podcast, but we've got to catch up with Jay. So Jay, let's go backwards to your first exposure. And I guess the question is was it your brother?
It was B's brother.
Or B's brother. God, good Lord. Sorry. I'll be here if you need me.
We're basically, we are basically siblings though, like all of us. So you're not totally wrong about that. Yeah, I played a little bit in high school and then I moved to Toronto, and in like the early 2010s, I just kind of got the itch again and I really wanted to play. And I played a Pathfinder game with some of my friends from college and experienced a TPK on the first session. And I was like, well, this sucks. But I kept playing anyway.
What do you think? What was that itch then, Jay? That's always interesting to me when we walk away from the hobby, but we're pulled back in. Do you have a sense of what that itch was?
I think I was having like a really strong board game connection at the time. Like I was going to a lot of board game cafes in Toronto, and first of all, I love meeting up with friends and having a thing to do. And second of all, I love being rewarded by doing the right thing. You know, I really like video games that like give me, a little good job when you do something right or whatever. And I know that role-playing games aren't really like that, but I love the idea that like there was a gamified experience in which I could be completely free and do what I want and be rewarded by the choices that I made, which weren't like set choices on a card like a board game might be. Like it was just so much more open. And I really only knew about D&D at the time, so that's what I was drawn towards. And somehow I ended up with Pathfinder, which is I don't remember that connection. But yeah, I was just really excited to have that like freedom. And also I really love the idea of GMing. I always wanted to be a GM. I wanted to be the one who was, I love being in control.
Okay.
I love,
understandable.
yeah. And I'm also just like, I'm one of those people who like, I'm really good at scheduling people. This is like, I feel like this is the most boring answer to why you'd want to be a GM, but I really can make it happen. You know, I can make sure that people show up. I know that people have got their character sheets. I know all the rules so that I can make sure if someone doesn't know the rules, I am there for them to support them. I like support roles, to be honest. When I play characters, I like a support role, and I feel like a GM is the ultimate support role in a game.
I cannot believe, Jay, that I have never heard anybody call GMing a support role. And that is so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. And Jay, you're talking about skill sets that I think don't get talked enough about when it talks to GMs, which is the ability to host, right? And to be a good host and to create a play space for everybody to be there and enjoy. So I couldn't agree with that more. All right. So now we're moving forward in time. The two of you are on session X of this epic campaign of D&D. Who says the P word first? Where does podcast start to form?
Oh, actually, I think it would have been after the island B.
Yeah, it was after the third session of the island.
So we were doing this epic campaign, and then B got the itch to GM and was like, I want to run a horror campaign for you guys. And we played 3 sessions of this incredibly frightening game that I still have nightmares about. Oh, no. But we, in a good way, that is a huge compliment. But we just decided to put a mic down there just to have it. Like we just wanted to listen back to it. And I wanted to try like editing, audio editing. We had no plans to make it a podcast. We just wanted to listen back to what we were playing. But then we were like, oh, we can do this.
I'm a huge advocate of that, by the way. I tell people all the time, I've got my home game that I run for the locals. I do a couple different offline games here and there for people, but the majority of my play is in actual plays live on Twitch, right? And I tell people, like, I cannot enumerate how critical it is that I can go back and watch, and how much that has improved me as a GM, how it prepares me for the next session. And I am a huge advocate of, if you're the last thing we need is another podcast, and the last thing we need is another actual play, right? I think we're good. So I'm not saying everybody should do that, but I think we can say, hey, record it. And it is going to be valuable to be able to go back and look at it. Now, we kind of touched on it a little bit in your intro, and this is kind of the spooky stuff that I think maybe you and I share, is a bit of a love for that. Is it fair to call yourself a horror fan?
For sure. Yeah.
And where does that come from?
If I can get a little spooky here.
Let's do it.
I think it comes from having an extremely overactive imagination and dream life as a child. And just sort of my own journey in coming to terms with having the light off and not needing to sleep with my back against the wall because I was imagining ghosts became an absolute obsession and fixation with horror, and especially paranormal, like supernatural horror.
Mm-hmm. So you say, hey, I think I want a GM, and I'm gonna do a horror sessions. But I think the big decision is player to GM. There's a lot of people that play and will always play and be happy as players. What made you go, I think I want to run a game?
Well, I had this idea for a story. And after watching JGM for so long and witnessing this collaborative beast that we made, I got very excited by the idea of creating something like that together in the seat of somebody who holds the story. And it was really daunting. I remember having a ton of anxiety about it and shaking during my first session. And I still do that sometimes when I GM, but there's really nothing like it. And the more types of systems that I get insight on, like what it's like to be in that seat or when there is no seat whatsoever, I love how that has sort of opened up different modes of storytelling, and I want to do it forever.
Well, and I feel like D&D creates a very difficult standard for being a GM, and I think it creates this barrier that I think I find frustrating, right? Because being a D&D GM is not easy, especially if you're going to do things like Jay was talking about, where you're going to make sure you know the rules so that you can teach the rules, and you're going to do all of this. It's such a huge amount of information to not only take in and retain, but to then accurately disseminate out there. And you compare that to other systems really that have a much lower barrier for GMing. And I think it's a shame, because I think there's a lot of people who are missing out on the fun of running games because they are rightly intimidated and rightly afraid of running D&D. But it did scare you. So I need to understand the island. All right, I want to run my own game. I think I can do this. I want to make something scary. What's next in this before your first session?
Well, I tried to homebrew on my first attempt at GMing. And I did. I made a whole bunch of like custom classes, like, oh, I'm a cryptozoologist. Oh, I'm a doomsday prepper. Oh, I'm a mad scientist. And it was deeply unbalanced. Like, I sat down and I just gave things, abilities here and there. And I think all of that would have blown up in my face on a long enough timeline, probably in a fun way. But I probably wouldn't recommend homebrewing D&D to be a horror campaign on your first time GMing. It did teach me a lot about like how to take a material and like mold it into a box that you have waiting.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my big takeaway from the island is like, pick your box, pick your system, squish it into that box, and pieces are going to fall off and go flying, but you're going to end up with something cool.
Yeah, I feel like hacking is kind of the marijuana of game design, right? It's the gateway and a great place to start.
Yes.
Because you have materials to work from, and you're not doing something stupid like trying to make your first game of running ever homebrew of DD. But and I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the island here for just a second. So Jay, you say you still have nightmares about the game that B ran. What has stuck with you? So what did B do, and what happened at that table that I could hear the vividness of your memory?
There's like a specific scene that B set that was clear it was coming. And then when it happened, the way that B executed it was really, really spooky. And basically it had to do with like one of the characters had parents who passed in a car crash. And when we were in the first session of the island, we were all kind of having like nightmares on the boat heading to the island. And the character whose parents had passed, he like exited his room, and then B described that there was like, you could hear the dinging of a car with a door open that was still on, and you could see headlights, and there was fog. And I'm actually like, I don't feel like I'm doing it justice because I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. And there was a song that this character associated with his parents, and B started describing that the song was playing, and it just really spooked me. But I was able to, because we were recording it, all of the ways that B described, especially the soundscape, I was able to sound design it. And so every time we listen back to it, like as soon as the car ding starts going, I'm like, it just really freaked me out. Yeah, it was really cool.
And honestly, like if I can kind of go back to an earlier answer, listening to the sound design that Jay put over that scene, and they like put the song in over top, that might have been the first moment where I was like, ding. Podcast.
So when you produce a podcast, I've talked to several podcasters, and obviously I am one. I'm very interested because I feel like all of us have a moment where we become comfortable. Where we kind of find our groove, we find our voice. I go back and listen, and I can tell you when I found my voice, right, and found my groove. Do the two of you feel like that's happened? And if so, when did you get a sense of like, okay, we've got this. This isn't new anymore. We know what this is going to sound like. We understand what this podcast is going to be. Can you give me a sense of when you got an understanding of that?
I don't want to come off as unprofessional here, but I don't think, and I hope to never reach that point.
Tell me. All right, great answer. What does that mean?
I just think that there's so much, like everything that we try is a new door opened. And so I feel like at every single time we get to the point of feeling like we found our voice, we try something that makes us feel unsteady again. B and I try stuff together on the podcast. I, in the last year, started doing like audio drama sound design, which really informed like the episodes of Planet Arcana that are coming out now. But I hope to never reach a place where I just clock in and do the work, and I know and I feel comfortable doing it, to be honest.
It sounds like you like to be pushed, right? And that you need that uneven ground to be able to explore and to push yourself. Is that a fair statement?
1,000,000% for me. Definitely.
Now, B, are you the same way, or is Jay dragging you to their uneven ground?
I think I'm more likely to just like sit and stew in something. But one of my favorite things in the universe is when someone comes and takes me by the hand and says, let's go into that cave over there. And then an adventure happens. So there are things that I have become very comfortable with, and there are things that I, like Jay, want to continue having somebody be like, forget this door. What's up with that door?
Nice. Very, very nice. We're going to get into it in the next segment, but just very briefly, you both are designers as soon as you get behind the GM screen. Right. GMs are game designers, but, and you create for your table. Did you both equally realize that you wanted to create for more than just your table? Or was this again a situation where either B or J, you said, hey, I think we need to make a game, and you brought the other person with you? Does that make sense? Where does this desire to go beyond the table come from?
I made my first game for the Anamnesis Game Jam, which lined up quite perfectly with, I was a participant of the tabletop mentorship program, which I don't know if that is still running. It seemed like, I think the year that I got in was the last year that they did it for some reason.
You ruined it.
I ruined it.
Well, we're done.
Or they were like, this is it. This is the ultimate designer. Packet
this
it.
is the peak. And I honestly would believe that because I had such an incredible pairing that I could really see that someone looked at that and was like, there's nothing more that we could do for the world.
Nice.
Yeah, I really got super lucky, but I was working with a mentor for a little bit who then we became friends. But they were helping me develop Contact, which was a hack of Anamnesis. And so I really just I had thought about game design before, but all of my ideas were like massive scope games because I think I had played so much D&D. Contact was for me an exercise in getting a game out in like a couple of months. And I achieved that. And then I did it again. And then B did her games this scene month, which is like kind of around the time that we were getting ready to announce Fool's Errand. So anyway, the answer is that we both kind of like stepped into game design a little bit further back than a Fool's Errand.
Sure. And it's that instinct that I want to explore a little bit more. And I think we'll do that after this break. So the Insider Insight series allows me to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators to learn how they approach their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and the methods for crafting their creations. I've got a lot of questions for J and B, and we'll get to it right after the break.
Robin is a notorious art thief. Fox is a well-respected special agent. Will Fox catch Robin? Will Robin get away? And before the end, will they kiss? Kiss Me If You Can is a two-player rom-com romp about art heists and love, coming this July from me, Sam Dunawald, host of the games podcast Dice Exploder. If you want to make your own rom-com in under an hour with someone you enjoy flirting with, go to Kickstarter now and follow Kiss Me If You Can.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
So we're going to dive deep into, where the Fool's Errand came from. And I really want to pick apart this need to make some more. But before we do that, I want to give everybody some context. Now, just real quick, we're recording this just a few days before the Kickstarter launches. But while you're listening to it, the Kickstarter is live. If you are a bad person and you are behind and listening to your Tabletop Talk and the Kickstarter is already closed, we'll also have a link in the show notes for where you can possibly pick up the game even after the closing. But I want to give a quick blurb on what the Fool's Errand is, and then I'm going to start picking some brains here. A Fool's Errand uses tarot cards to tell an expansive science fantasy story over several phases. The group collaborates on the capital letters Big Oops, the biggest calamity in history. Players pinpoint what the world lost when the previous fools reached their journey's zenith, and which major arcana consorted or clashed with each other along the way. Then players create their fools, android or human characters who become intertwined with the major arcana gods, including those who had a hand in the Big Oops, and whose journeys are led by unique tarot decks built with choices made in character creation. Finally, you play in the post-calamity, exploring both the waking world and the dream and digital networks, the surrealistic subconscious realm of humans and androids, respectively. Both are places of heightened power and quantum knowledge accessible to the fools. Great blurb. Very evocative, but I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. In the same way I talked about how people can be players for their whole life and be very satisfied and enjoy the hobby, right? There's nothing wrong with being a player your entire life in this hobby. Thank God for players. But there's a select subset that say, I want to run a game. And I'm talking to two people that obviously are in that subset. I consume RPGs all the time. I've got 3 separate hobbies. One of them is reading RPGs, one of them is collecting RPGs, and one of them is playing RPGs. Mm-hmm. And they are not the same hobby. They are 3 distinct hobbies. And I get joy out of all 3 of them. What I have yet to have is a need to make a game. But that was not true for the 2 of you. So I think I want to start with you, B. Why are you and not like me?
I don't think I'm ever going to get over the idea that I can be sort of a version of God for my friends while we make believe together something totally preposterous as adults. I didn't think that would be something that was accessible to me as an adult. I was ready to play act a lot longer than my friends were, and kind of like had already started to let that go into my adulthood when we finally started playing D&D 5e. And I was just sort of like, hey, I grew up on all of these incredible stories. Like, I want to make my own Final Fantasy. Like, I want to design a video game without knowing how to program, and I want to set my friends loose in it and give them agency. There's nothing more exciting to me than that.
Was it a situation, B, where you had certain genres, certain styles of gaming in your head, and you weren't finding the systems that supported that, so you felt I needed to create my own, or was there something else driving this?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I ultimately wanted a game where being GMing was a little bit more accessible than D&D 5e, where the stories were going to be absolutely enormous and where absurdity had as much of a home in that enormity of storytelling as drama did. And there are certainly games out there who kind of have like a Venn diagram overlap with those ideas, but nothing that hit it to my taste.
And how about for you, Jay? Same question, right? Why are you not like me? Why are you not satisfied trying out new games, exploring new games, and just playing new games? Where is this need to make?
I think it's different for all of the games that I have made. I think that I don't know if this is an unsatisfying answer as well, but I just kind of like the process of creating and iterating.
Why would that be a bad answer? It's an amazing answer.
I don't know, because I feel like I should be like, I saw this thing in the game and I knew that only I could do it or whatever.
No. That's the 5e version.
That's the 5e version, and we've moved past that.
But so let's talk about that then. What is it about the process that you find so satisfying?
Okay, so this is spiritually similar to my answer about GMing, in which I'm like, oh, I'm good at organizing a group of people. I think one of my superpowers as a creator is that I am extremely adept at seeing a project from start to finish. In all of the artistic endeavors I've ever had, I've never had a problem with like stalling on something because I'm like, oh, is it good or not? Or should I release it or whatever? I think for better or for worse, I have just released everything that I've ever made. You know, and it's really cool because I can look back. And I'm in my 30s now, and I can look back on things that I made when I was, 15 to 20 and then 20 to 25. And some of them are really bad. And it's kind of a beautiful, like, this was where I was in my life at that time. And I think it's like kind of a bit of a legacy thing, maybe, that like I want to document where I was in my life by the things that I've made, because that's the way that I can express myself.
Well, and that has an overlap with the origins of the podcast as well, right? This desire to produce, this desire to document, that completely fits with it. So I'm finding with games, the more I talk to designers, that there's a little bit of a chicken and egg. And I want to talk about it with Fool's Errand. There is the narrative, the world, the feeling, and all of that. And then there's the mechanics, right? And the best games, those two become inextricably intertwined and married and blurred with each other. But what I'm finding is usually one is the lead for starting the process of making the game. So what was the lead here? Did the two of you have an idea of the world and the types of stories that you wanted to tell with this game? Or was there a mechanic that begged for a world?
I think very clear cut it was the world, because this is the world of the game is the setting for the podcast. So this is something that we have been iterating on for years, and reached a point at which it just felt like the only way that other people could kind of live in this world was to have a custom system for it. Though I would hope that the mechanics do feel very married, because you do use the setting is so baked in tarot lore, and you use tarot cards to play. So I think that there is that nice connection, but very clear cut, our world and our setting and our lore came first.
So this world was played using D&D.
Right.
And this is the game that you ran and you run, right, Jay?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you come up with this setting? And then obviously, well, as soon as it hits the table, it becomes everybody's world and everybody contributes to it. But is the origin of this very unique idea yours?
No. So to be clear, the big campaign that I ran for B and our other friends, we did 50 plus sessions of that. We stopped it.
Not the same thing.
That's right. And then when B and I started co-GMing, we made this world together for the podcast. So it is made for the show.
Got it. Okay, that helps. For some reason, I assumed that one became the other. Sorry, so let's go to that moment then, right? Where is it? So here's a chicken and egg as well. Do you sit down and say, we want to do an actual play podcast, so we're going to need a world to inhabit here, or we have a world, so we need a podcast?
It was actually, B and I were just like, we were just kind of excited about the idea of working on projects together. And then we were like, what if we do a podcast? And we had a bunch of strange ideas for podcasts that we were floating around. None of them were actual play. And then B came to me in December of, I remember it like it was yesterday, in December of 2020, I believe, and was like, what if we co-GM'd an actual play? And I was like, that's a wild idea.
So B signs up, you sign up. What's the next step? Well, all right, hold on a second. I understand what the phrase co-GM means, but what does it mean? Right. So like, well, how does that work?
You share a brain.
How do you co-GM? Okay.
Yeah. You grow up together. You think as one, you breathe as one, you live as one.
A lot of characters in session 0 of the brother, Joseph.
Yeah.
Shared trauma.
Yeah, we have a lot of answers to this. I think when we do interviews, we frequently get asked, like, what advice would you give to people who want to co-GM? And we really struggle with that question because I just don't think we work together like normal colleagues would.
Like normal folk, yeah.
Because we grew up together. We're basically siblings. We really do share a brain. We really make a lot of decisions that like a week will pass and neither of us will remember which one of us said it because it came from the two-headed beast.
Right. It is when we say co-GM, it is like it's B's turn, then it's my turn, or is it we are running each session together, or this is B is going to do 80%, I'll do 20%, and then we're going to flip that. Can I get an understanding if I was at this table, what this co-GMing experience would be for me as a player?
Yeah. So we have what I will loosely call scripts going into a session where we have a collection of beats that we might hit. Along with those come some narrative beats. We'll write out some things to read. And then we decide like who's going to be present in terms of NPCs, and we'll assign the NPCs. Those are the ones that we play. And then we'll be like, okay, so once they're in the cave, you run the cave. And then once we get to the encounter, I'll be the villain. You run initiative. And we talk about things like that. And then in practice, once we get into the session, it's that plus, like sometimes we just, we're just very good at giving each other space and like taking over and passing the buck. And it works really well for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine in this scenario, as it's starting to become a little bit clearer to me, there's strengths and weaknesses, right? There's certain things that B, you're very good at, and there's certain things that J is very good at. And I would like to get a sense of that. Obviously, it raises everything when you're doing it together. So B, in your mind, what is J very good at as a GM?
Organization.
We've learned
big
that.
picture thinking. Yeah. Big picture thinking, organization, preemptive problem solving, like understanding like what problems are going to come up, like what's going to enrich the experience of the players, what we're going to have to solve and what we need to think about. They're also very good at everything else. I would say that like those are the things that I really admire the most, but they're also incredible at playing NPCs. They score the show. They do the music for the show, 100% of it.
Wow.
They edit the show. And so they have a lot of strengths, I would say.
And your turn, Jay. So where does B shine?
B is a visionary for like in many ways, like especially to do with having a really clear idea of what the world looks like, not just visually, but just like how it feels, what kind of people are there. The setting is enriched because B has touched it and because B has looked at it. And she's also a really, really good actor. So when she plays NPCs, it's like the next level. So I think that's probably the biggest strength of hers. Also, she is like the visual identity of the show because she does all the illustration and the logos and everything. And she's good at everything else too. So those are the things that I admire about B. But
that's excellent.
Yeah, we've learned a lot from each other, I think, in this process.
Big time. Yeah, big time.
All right. So I need both of you to help me out here. I'm going to finish this sentence. You will dig the world in Fool's Errand if you've enjoyed the movie X, if you've watched and enjoyed the show Y, if you've read the book Z. Can you give me an idea of some touchstones, things that other media that if people dig that, they're going to dig this?
Ooh, yes. I love this. If you love Final Fantasy VII for its intricate and large storytelling and world building, you will like this game.
If you like Cowboy Bebop,
Ooh.
yeah, for like a science fiction fantasy-ish world where there's like an equal measure of drama and absurdity and, you know, a crew of people traveling the expanse and getting into ruckus, then you will enjoy this.
Is the tone of the game light, heavy?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Hopeful and disastrous?
Yes.
Just kind of a little bit of everything?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like we want you to explore like themes of identity, loss, and godhood, but we also want you to play characters named Farts McGillicuddy.
Got it.
That name appears in the text, so that it gives you an idea.
So let's talk a little bit mechanics now. I was very fascinated by the idea of each individual character having their own tarot deck, and that the makeup of this tarot deck happens in character creation. This is the first time I've seen that. That doesn't mean it's the first time it's ever existed. There may be other games out there that I've never come across that do this, but I find that very, very fascinating. Where did that first start to appear? Was that in the beginning? Everybody's going to have a custom tarot deck, or did that come later?
Very beginning.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
one thing that we haven't mentioned that is probably really, really relevant is that in the podcast, the gods of the world are the major arcana of the tarot deck.
Got it.
And that's a premise that we've ported directly to Fool's Errand.
And did you just know, like, because of the world and because of this lore, we have to have tarot be the center of the mechanics here? Or were you pushed to find a mechanic that works with tarot deck, or did tarot solve the problem and it just kind of worked out that way? Does that make sense?
I feel like we put less thought into it than that. Like at the beginning when we were just like, well, the tarot's the lore, so we should use a tarot deck. But then in doing so have found so many ways that it couldn't have been anything else. Like the fact that the major arcana need to appear in some significant way is, I think the most obvious pull. But also like the idea that when you're rolling dice and you roll a bunch of terrible rolls and you feel like you're due for a good roll, you can feel that as much as you want, but it's not true. But when you're pulling cards from a deck, and let's say you pull 8 bad cards in a row, you literally have whittled your deck down to the good cards. And so there is some kind of like destiny that you have a little bit of an insight into, that you're like, I'm due for a good card pull, and it's true. And there's like some gambling elements there that are really exciting.
So, B, can you give me an idea? And obviously, we could spend 2 hours, and I could just make you guys run the game for me, and I'm not going to do that to you. But I would love to get a snippet to get a feeling, right? So, I am a character. I'm a player with a character. I've got my own custom deck. Can you give me a bit of a little insight of when would I need to pull that deck out, and what happens that after I flip the card? Can we set a little bit of a scene to give me a sense of a context here?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that your character is very spiritual and they have a great attachment to the major arcana, and they go to a site of great spiritual significance, and you go, I've been devoted to the star arcana for as long as I can remember. And in this moment of great vulnerability, I'd like to reach out to the star. You would probably pitch to me, the GM, that you're going to draw a commune check. You have a specific limit score that you have to draw at or under for that check. And it depends on the character, but generally it will be something like 8. So then you would draw the card. If it's an 8 or lower, you would succeed and you would commune with that arcana. Otherwise, you would fail. And then there is a third scenario where you draw an arcana card from your deck. And in that scenario, say, for example, you have chosen death to be one of the arcana related to your motivations. You're reaching out to the star and death comes up instead. So that is a chance for something unexpected to happen along the lines of that major arcana's tenets. So death is about new beginnings, endings, times of transition. So you might, instead of hearing from the star, hear from death, and death says, the star can't talk to you right now. It's in the middle of ending, so something wild like that might happen. It could be good. It could be bad. And like, I guess a more like casual thing would be like, I would like to sneak out without my mom noticing, and I'm going to have you draw that check, and maybe you knock something over, or maybe you draw temperance and your mom comes downstairs and gives you a very measured punishment.
So I understand from a numerical standpoint, right? We have a target number. We're trying to flip under it. That makes a ton of sense to me. Who's responsible for interpreting it beyond that, right? So there's the basic binary, you hit it or you didn't hit it, but it sounds like there's a lot more to that we're pulling a lot more out of that. Is that something that the player does, that the GM does? Is it collaborative?
I'd say definitely collaborative, especially collaborative when the major arcana appear, because it should be interesting and heightened and significant. But aside from that, when you're just drawing like regular checks, I do think that it's a little bit collaborative, but they're just not. Every failure should mean something, but it's not as like world changing as a major arcana. So I think it can rest on like kind of both the players and the player who drew the check and the GM agreeing on whatever feels the most fun and the most silly and the most dire, depending on what the situation needs.
So the two of you are starting to build this game. You start writing some things down. You start bouncing ideas off of each other. When was the first time somebody other than the two of you were exposed to the game?
We built the game in 2 weeks, and then we play tested it on Planet Arcana in canon episodes. So you can go back and listen. It's the middle of the story, so I wouldn't recommend it because there's so many spoilers. But if you are caught up on Planet Arcana, you've been sort of treated to listening to us develop the game from start to finish, which we're not at yet, but you've seen all of the iterations of it. So within 2 weeks of having this idea, we brought it to our players, and they played brand new characters just for 2 episodes. And then we went back to our main campaign. And then we've since done that again. And we've also since brought in guests to the podcast that played a 3-session mini series that was in canon, but like separate so that you could listen to it without having the knowledge of the whole campaign. So we did that. We did it on the show. We also play tested it at Breakout Con in Toronto this year, which was sort of our first like stranger and public playtest.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I guess when you play together with a lot of performers for a long time, there's just one experience that you're going to have compared to like playing with people who are sitting down at a table at Breakout Con, who are primarily strangers to each other and to you.
Yep.
And so we were actually really, really lucky to have a few different, very distinct and good experiences. We had a full table with 7 people, and we had a one person table for the very next game. And then we had a 4 and 5 person table. So from that, we were able to determine that like 3 to 5 players is the sweet spot. Even though our 7-player table was really, really fun, playing with 4 and 5, was just sort of the sweet spot. And then we had players, we literally had somebody sit down who was playing TTRPGs for the very first time that day, and did an incredible job at just picking up this weird system and getting, entrenched in the lore and going through an adventure. We had people who had played a really long time. We had people who had designed their own games. Mm-hmm. And then we gave them a survey at the end, and they were able to give us some really valuable feedback about like what aspects of the game they were interested in, what they had fun with, what they were confused by. So we had a lot more of a diversity of reactions and insight into the game, and it was really special.
Mm.
So let's imagine that I broke into your car at the con and I stole the documentation for Fool's Errand.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get my Kickstarter fulfilled,
mm-hmm.
and I compare the two to each other. Can you give me an idea of what happened when you put this in front of strangers? How did the game end up changing?
The thing about playing with strangers is that I feel like they're more willing to kind of tell you pretty directly about what they liked and didn't like. Not that we got a lot of like, brutal or blunt comments or anything like that, but there was a couple of things that became very clear where they were like, oh, you set this up in like when you were talking about the lore at the beginning of the game and we didn't get to that. And I was really excited about that. Like there was one specific thing that kept coming up that everyone was like, I really wanted to experience that. Or if they did experience that, they were like, that was my favorite part of the game. So
right.
It almost like it helped us perspective shift on what people liked, which I think was really crucial because this game was built on the lore of a podcast that we are so intimately familiar with. And it's we needed to have people who didn't know anything about the podcast tell us what they were actually interested in, because a lot of things to do with the lore, especially in the show, we've had 80 episodes of the show. So there's been things that we've introduced that like needed an 80 episode buildup to kind of feel important and significant.
Right.
Whereas like when we're bringing this to people for the very first time, they don't know anything about the lore. It was just really good to have people be like, oh, this is the thing that I attached to. And some of it was surprising and some of it was not, but it helped us like perspective shift on what people actually wanted from the game.
So let's talk about something that was surprising. So what was a promise that was made at the beginning of the game that some people felt was fulfilled and others said, I really was hoping to do that? Can you give me an idea of what that was?
Specifically the networks. So there is a realm or realms in our world that are subconscious realms. There's the waking world and the subconscious world. And there's the dream network, which humans go to when they sleep, and the digital network where androids go to when they sleep. So we set this up as places of heightened power and kind of like they exist on dream rules. So you can kind of do things that you normally wouldn't be able to in the waking world. And I totally, like, this shouldn't have been a surprise, but like we talked about that and then we're like, anyway, so you're playing in a city. and they liked it. But I think everybody.
I want to go to sleep.
Well, yeah, exactly. But then when we had playtests in the networks, people were so jazzed on it. And just every time that like it didn't come up, which makes sense for us because in the podcast, it's so it's very special when the players go to the networks. But we have the benefit of having 80 episodes. I think most people who play a game, if they're generous, will give us 8 to 10 sessions, and that would be incredible. Right. So we really had to sort of think about it in a way of like, how do we get this to you faster and still make it feel special?
And B, what was that solution? So what did you do to be able to deliver what Jay just mentioned?
Well, one of the things that we did is we kind of codified it in text as being special to the fools. Typically people will slip into these networks in a semi-conscious state and like by accident, and they don't really have a lot of power to explore them directly. And so there is an implication to this in the podcast, but we made it direct that like fools can go into these networks with intention. And it will cost you stuff to do so, but you can do it at any time because you're the fools. So that was sort of like a doorway that we firmly put a door stop in, a wedge. We kicked a chute in there to keep the door open.
Nice. Yeah.
Were there certain non-negotiables in making this game? Were there situations where you said, I'm not exactly sure what this game's going to look like when we're done, but it's going to have this? Were there certain things that no matter what, you were not going to put a game out that didn't include? And this could be structurally, Jay. This could be, how the freaking book is organized, or it could be from a look feel. I'd love to get an idea of what the stalwarts were from beginning to end.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, the major arcana had to be important. You had to be able to play a human, android, or somewhere in between. You had to be able to go into the networks. Those were like, I feel like the 3 biggest like lore pieces. Something that's very abstract that we're trying to maintain is the fact that we want it to be absurd and dramatic. And there should be humor in it, and your humor should like pay off the drama. You should earn the drama by being funny, or by being silly and stupid. So we're working in that space to make sure that like the tone kind of comes across, which I feel like making sure that the tone is right across tables is a real challenge without like feeling like you're stepping on people's toes. And I would say that the way that we're attempting to achieve this now is that from the moment that we started working on the game, we knew who we wanted our editor to be. So we are working with the best editor in the biz, Samantha Lee, who is a fan of the podcast, which is huge, and is like an all-star editor. So we kind of have the best of both worlds as someone who can be an outside eye while knowing what we're trying to get at with our tone. So that's been really special.
So let's talk about Elizabeth for a little bit, because editors tend to be the unsung heroes in game design. Is there something that is in the final version of this that would not be there if not for Elizabeth? Where would I see Elizabeth's fingerprint?
Samantha.
Or Samantha, her too. Jesus. Where did I get Elizabeth from?
I don't know. I'm worried that I said it.
So, listeners, the key to being a good podcast host is you have to listen. Make up names. So Samantha, I'm sorry. I don't know why I transformed you into Elizabeth, but the question stands. And what was funny, just for those of you, we communicate this over video, and both B and Jay had very concentrated look on their faces. I thought it was because I was asking just a kick-ass question. You're sitting there going, "What the hell is Craig talking about?" Right. Sorry about that. Where will I find Samantha's fingerprints in this game?
Well, the first indie game that I think B and I played together was Anamnesis by Sam Lee. And Anamnesis, if you're not familiar, is a game about finding your lost memories by drawing tarot cards about it, essentially. And so tarot is a huge focus for that game. So Sam is not only entrenched in tarot, they also, like I said, they're a fan of the podcast, so they understand the lore, and their editing style is very much, they have such a good grasp of mechanics that are light enough that it will be approachable to people without having to sit and read the book over and over and over. But for me, I think this was a question asked earlier about what needed to be in the game. And for me, there needed to be a little bit of crunch. And Sam is doing such a good job of honoring that while really making us kill our darlings in a way that feels really fun, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of still in progress, but the fingerprints they've left already have kind of touched every aspect of the game, right down to this is the order in which you need to present the information for it to make sense.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah. And, right down to this mechanic or this phrase doesn't vibe with me the way that I picture it in the podcast. So even as specific as that, it's going to be inextricable by the last version.
So there's a multiverse where the three of us are recording this podcast and you're saying, yeah, Craig, we've got about 4 more years of play testing. And then I think we might crowdfund, but that's not this universe. I want to get an understanding of when you knew it was time. How did you know that, okay, enough. It is time to crowdfund this. It's time to get this game out.
Enough.
Isn't it just sometimes easier to work with a deadline?
Sure. And was that it?
I think that we could have worked on this game for 4 more years. And I think that we will work on this game for 4 more years. I'm totally confident about having a really great game out to backers when we promise them. But I'm pretty excited about a decision that we made was to we were planning on doing this huge Kickstarter. We were going to have a custom tarot deck with it. We were going to have a zine with a bunch of modules in it. The book was going to be huge. Literally it was going to be a big sized book. And then we were what if we were realistic about this? And what if we did one of those things, which the most important thing being the rule book? And we're really excited about developing this game over the next few years, eventually making a custom tarot deck when we have the audience for it and making the scene with the modules in it. I think that it's kind of important to foster a community when you want to make a game that should be played for years long. I don't really want to make this and then it be done and then I'm working on the next game. I'd like to work on this game for a really long time, but I'd like to get people in on it sort of as soon as possible. And that means players and, having their experience and yeah.
So B, I'm up in Canada visiting next year, and I call the both of you up and say, hey, let's grab some lunch. You guys meet me. We're walking down the street together to go get some soup and sandwiches. And someone comes up and goes, hey, wait a minute. Are you J and B, the ones that made Fool's Errand?
Yeah, that happens all the time.
We just played it last night. And what is the next thing that person could say to you that would tell you we did it?
Oh, I think they would tell us that their character Farts McGillicuddy became Arcana, became God. And that would be exactly what you should do. That feels like a not very good answer, but man,
it sounds like a phenomenal answer. Actually, I think it aligns with everything that we've learned. How about for you, B?
God, that was really good, Jay. I think they would also tell me that they could never explain to somebody who wasn't at the table how special it was.
Yeah,
I want them to be like, I'm trying to do this justice, but you just don't understand because you weren't there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I've had that experience so many times, and I would that's my goal. I want to give someone that.
The magic.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. So guys, we're going to take one more break. When we get back from this break, I am going to break open their heads and find out what they've been watching, listening to, reading, and playing. We're going to find out what they're grooving on. We'll be right back.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all, take Xyzal. At night.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This is Sean. You may have heard of me from such movies as Brett and Sean Go to Illinois, 2 Motorcycles, 1 Stick of Dynamite, and Gaming and BS. What kind of RPG podcast is that? After my NFTs were stolen, I decided to become a patron of Third Floor Wars. The content is great and it costs me less than a good shot of liquor. So consider becoming a patron. It may just land you your next big role. Head over to patreon.com/Third Floor Wars. Tell Craig Sean sent you.
So J&B, this was like an unofficial segment for a long time. I would bring it up with some creators and not with others. In my own weird way, it was, I know we've talked about everything now, but I don't want to stop talking to you. So I would come up with something else to talk about. But what I've learned is that there's a bit of a journey that tends to happen on my podcast in an episode. We talk about the beginnings and we go through and how we became creators, the decisions we made that formed this thing that ends up on people's bookshelves and gets played at people's table. And the final through line to that is that the two of you don't just make, right? We talked about Cowboy Bebop. We talked about Final Fantasy VII. The two of you also consume as well. And your hope is that people are going to grab this game and fall in love with it. I want to know what you have fallen in love with. So is there anything recently, B, that you've watched, read, or played that has kind of taken over your brain?
Yeah, taken over my brain is exactly what's happened. And the interesting thing about the piece of media I'm about to talk about is that I finished it and then I immediately went to the subreddits because I didn't mind about spoilers. That's my favorite thing, is when I'm obsessed with something and then I'm like, hey, I'm done. Now I'm going to go to the subreddit and see all the fan comics and fan theories. And one thing I learned when I did that was that this piece of media was born of a TTRPG campaign where all of the players then went and opened up a video game studio and created Disco Elysium. And I know, right?
I didn't know that about the TTRPG connection.
I didn't either.
I didn't either. And I was trying to figure out before the interview what system they used, but it was deeply homebrewed in any case. And the setting for Disco Elysium came out of that. And I mean, it wears its, inspirations on its sleeve as a game. Like, you literally see the dice rolling when you make a decision, and they actually break out of meta a lot of the time. Like, you play this detective and your partner's like, I walk behind you because your movement pattern is really hard to predict and you're just running around and looking in containers. That's something that members of your precinct are known to do. And I was like, like that blew me away that they put their finger on this mechanic and managed to like make it a story thing, but also like a nod to the audience. I love stuff that breaks the fourth wall like that. I love when I find out that stuff was inspired by a TTRPG. It's more common than you think, or than I thought anyway. And I honestly, I finished the game and I was like, I can't believe I made the podcast that I did having never played this game.
Why is that? What's the connection there?
There's just a lot of like the esoteric themes that like, you know, there's a hole in the universe, and meanwhile I'm an alcoholic disco man. Like it's that kind of like absurdity with like, and also, did you know that communist thought is tangible energy waves that infiltrates your mind and makes you better at being a stud? Like these are all actual things in the game. So yeah, I was like, wow, they did it first, but I still love them.
Yeah, it's so I remember the game visually. I never played the game, but I remember the game having a very striking visual style to it as well. And now I might have to go back and explore it. But it's interesting that it has elements of what you're trying to achieve with Fool's Errand, right? Which is the big, high fantasy kind of major shit going on, and then Farty McButterpants, right? Exactly. Is also there as well. That's so good. Right? That's cool. That's very, very cool. How about for you, Jay? What is something that's taken over your brain?
It is currently October. And we all know what that means. It's spooky month. My partner and I are attempting to do this challenge called Hooptober. It was made by a film critic, and I don't remember his name, but the point of it is that you watch 31 horror movies in October, or in our case, we started in August. It's what it is. But Hooptober is specifically a list that changes every year, and the criteria are really interesting. There was like, you have to have at least 6 movies from 6 different countries, and they should be from 8 different decades. And then there's like more specific ones, like one movie from 1984 and one movie from 2011 or whatever. So it's this really interesting list to compile horror movies that sort of forces you to go outside of what you know. So I would say my partner and I have watched some absolutely horrible movies doing this. But it's really
when we talk about these challenges, all you hear about is like, I found this movie I never would have watched and it was amazing. Nobody ever talks about the shitty movies you have to watch to get through something like this.
We've watched some shit for sure, like some absolute garbage, I would say.
That's great.
But it means that whenever we do watch a good horror movie, I'm like, yeah. And it's also kind of helping me identify what I really love in horror, which is that like horror forces an emotional response from you, whereas like
it does
in a more explicit way than like drama and comedy does. Like comedy makes you laugh and drama makes you feel like a strong emotion, but like the way that my body tenses up when I watch horror, and like that I'm literally covering my eyes sometimes because I know that something's going to pop out. I'm a huge jump scare apologist, and I just I just love the way that horror movies like force you to feel something in a way that I think people kind of like, they don't appreciate it as much. Like, and if they did, horror movies would win more awards. So I know I'm not talking out of my ass on that one.
I could not agree more. And people on the listeners know how it's my favorite genre. It's my favorite genre of book. It's my favorite genre of game. It's my favorite genre of movies. My better half, my wife, can't even read the description on the back of the box. She hates horror. And we were on a road trip, and I was trying to explain to her, and the best I could come up with was horror it gives me a safe place to feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. So I can experience these very strong fight or flight emotions, this fear, but it's not real. So it's a weird thing where I can experience this, but it's in a safe place. And I think that's the closest I've come to clicking getting it to click in my wife's head. I don't know if that rings for you guys or not.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
I love that. It's like microdosing.
Microdosing horror.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. It's thrilling, right? It's thrilling. It's exciting. It is, it pushes boundaries. It is definitely very, very unique. There's a lot of things that you could be doing right now, but for some reason I talked you into spending an hour or so with me, and I want you both to know how much I appreciate this.
We appreciate it so much. This was awesome.
For those of you listening, guess what? You made it. It's the end, and I appreciate you listening. Take care.
Hi, this is Jay Strautman.
Hi, this is B. Marsollier.
When we're not running...
You do when we're not, and I'll do tabletop talk.
Okay, I see. When we're not running when we're not talking about science fantasy, is that okay? When we're not talking about science fantasy to each other? Okay, yeah, cool. All right, let's just try it again.
Perfect. You both are very good at this. You should start a podcast.
Good, I'm glad.
Excellent segment.
Amazing.
Both you just get it, which I very much appreciate.
Ooh, wow, I feel really comfortable. So, I mean, that's
the goal. So literally the biggest compliment you could give me. So thank you.
Oh, good.
It's really important to me that my guests feel comfortable, because then I can get the most juice. So, all right. If you're ready, I'll bring us back. You two just sold the shit out of that game.
Oh, good.
Well, you helped us sell the shit out of that game really adeptly.
That was really good.
Oh, thank you. Fuck yeah.
I find what we just did to be far more effective.
Yeah.
Than you elevator pitching and, so on and so forth. And true storyteller mode, think about the lines we went from session zeros together as kids, just all the connections that we were able to piece together that brought up to it. So it's part of the magic of what happens, and you guys you leaned into it, and I appreciate that.
Oh, we appreciate you.
Yeah, really. You are doing us so much justice right now.
Have you done this before?
Well, thank you. This is good. All right, this is a lighter segment. No more heavy shit. I'll bring us back. Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over, and you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers. Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.